Morning, everyone. So, yesterday we looked at the legend of Osiris and Isis for your Egyptian stories and folk tales. Today we're going to look at the legend that is the creation of Egypt and how Egypt actually formed. There are lots of different stories about that and how Egypt was actually created, the ancient Egypt, and the priesthood story and legend. There are various versions of this. So I've had a look and there are 3 or 4 that seem to be similar. So I'm going to go with those ones because I can't really find a definitive answer. So I'm going with the ones that overlap because it's a long, long time ago. So I have to go with what historians agree on because it's not like I could go and ask an Egyptian king. So here we go. So ancient Egypt has different stories telling us and the world about its inhabitants and how they all came to be. The priesthood in the center are the creator gods, and they support their own version and how we meet the gods like Atum, Re, Ta, Num, and Kefer, and they perform the acts of the great maker, but in different ways. There was no legend of how the story began of the Nile people because the Nile flooded every year and the beginning of everything couldn't possibly have started like that. But the most common and probably one of the oldest stories state that at the beginning of time there was nothing but water called the Nun. And the first ground coming out of that was a rock called the Ben stone. And it was slightly an irregular shape from the beginning, where they get Ben, of time, and that it was from a broad and short obelisk shape, which normally an obelisk is a pointed top in a 4-sided pyramid fashion, which is why some people think that's what a pyramid is shaped like. But some people don't agree with that. And this is why I was saying that I had to go with what historians believe to be the most likely stories based on reading the hieroglyphs of the tombs. On the Ben stone stood Atum, and he coughed and spat out Shu and Tefnut. And they are the gods. Okay, so the world creators, the people that created the world that is Egypt, are Atum. He was from Heliopolis, which made everything, even himself. He then created woman from a bit of flesh from his hand. Ta, who was also from Heliopolis in Lower Egypt, made the world by simply saying words and made earth raised from water, very similar to the story in our Bible. Re is told in a legend to be the creator by using a tear from his eye to build all of the world. And if you think about some of the hieroglyphs where there's a symbol and there's a teardrop in his eye, and that's for the symbol for Re. Num is from the island of Elephantine in the south of Egypt, and he was the creator who made the world and all of its people from his potter's wheel. And he made people from mud of the Nile. Kefer, which also represented Re, made all the other gods taken from his own body. He created life symbolically every morning by commanding the sun to rise. Amon was from Thebes during the New Kingdom, and he was connected to the creation of the world, saying that he was once like Atum, who created himself at the dawn of time. So he comes in later in terms of the Egyptian kingdom. And Thoth was in Upper Egypt, and he was the maker of the world, and the first ones he helped to life were frogs and snakes. So, the origins of the universe according to ancient Egypt. One of the oldest and best known legends comes from Heliopolis and goes like this. From the beginning there was nothing but a water chaos called Nun. And from that came the god Atum, who had created himself. From matter taken from his own body he made Shu, the god of air, and Tefnut, the goddess of moisture and rain. They in turn had the twins Jeb, the earth god, and Nut, the goddess of the sky. From these two, Jeb and Nut, came all of the other Egyptian gods and goddesses. Shu is often seen holding up the sky with his son Jeb lying underneath. This family of four is the very foundation upon which the world exists, as they represent the basic elements of earth, water, air, and sky. The first gods. The old tradition from Heliopolis was made by Kheper, who is also another form of the sun god Re. He was the father of Osiris, Nephthys, Isis, Set, also known as Seth, or Horus. The priests from Hermopolis in Upper Egypt declared that Thoth was the primeval god and created the first four couples that built up everything. Nun and Nuntet were snakes, who represented and dwelled in the mass of water from which everything emerged. He and Haut are frogs, who stood for indefinite time and long life. And third were Kek and Keket, snakes, who embodied darkness. And the fourth are Nai and Naiut, and they're also frogs, and they represent the void. During the New Kingdom, the two late ones are Ammon and Ammonet. It's all confusing. So, how do they create man or humans? This is just creation of humans. The legend of how they create humans. Once upon a time, mankind was created on a wheel, on a potter's wheel, by the creator Num. And that's spelt Khnum. He made them out of mud in various colours from the Nile. In the order in which they were made were as follows. First there was Romut, which means men, and these were the Egyptians themselves. The second to come from the potter's wheels were Amu, and these were the people from the desert mountains of the east of the Nile. And this name was later used to call Asians in general. Number 3 were the Temhu, and they were the fair-skinned people from the Mediterranean coast of the Nile and the oases of the Nile Valley. And the last to be made were the Nehisi, which were the black people south of Egypt, below the province of Nubia. The names of these people seem to be very old and are from the early times when the Egyptians didn't have a name for Asians, which they encountered well before the first dynasty. And like I said, the other legend is that mankind was created from a tear that fell from the eye of the god Re and turned into men and women. The fair-skinned Libyans, considered as cousins by the people in the Nile Valley, were formed in the same way. So that is how the gods and the creation of man, according to Egyptian legend from the hieroglyphs, were formed. That is your brief introduction into the history of the formation of Greek mythology and the formation of man according to Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology. It's because year 5 and 6 did Greek mythology last term. Tomorrow we're going to look at the underworld and the mythology surrounding the underworld and the Book of the Dead, and why they went through the ritual they did in mummification. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.